Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
It's where were you when you were our age?
Where was I, like, geographically, like where I grew up, or like what was I interested in when I was
Yeah,
your age?
interested
like
in
what you were doing.
What was your path like?
Okay, so my mom was a teacher. I liked school because I liked like doing well at things, and I did pretty well in school. But the one thing I knew when I was in sixth grade, when I was in sixth grade. You're not in sixth grade. When I was in high school, actually, it was all the way from sixth grade. From sixth grade pretty much until high school, when like our teachers started talking to us about careers and stuff like that, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew, and I was very passionate. I never ever wanted to be a teacher, which is really funny, because my mom was a teacher, my grandma was a teacher. But when I was in high school, I was involved in like leadership. I was in a lot of clubs. I was an avid, and a lot of it was just because I wanted to be involved in everything. I didn't want to miss anything. My senior year, going into my senior year, I was applying to lots of different schools. Most of them were kind of away from home because I wanted to get the experience of other places other than my hometown. But my senior year was interesting because I did so well in school, I didn't have to take as many classes because I took AP classes and things, and even was able to take some college classes. And I had a lot of friends who didn't make the best choices with their schooling, and so now they're kind of like flustered because if they don't pass this, then they might not graduate. So I found myself right around your age starting to tutor some of my friends because I was like, oh, I could help you out with that. And so things like government or AP this or AP that, I would talk to like my friends and I would say like, oh, what are you interested in? And so someone might say like, oh, I'm really all about baseball. And they would say like, oh, well, math is kind of like baseball. And they're like, how? And I'm like, okay, so like for example, geometry. And then I would tie it into that. And then they would start to tell me like, oh, I get it. Why did the teacher just teach it like that? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe they did. I don't know. And so what happened was people, like, I would help my close friends, and then they would go tell other people, like, oh, ask Alyssa, my first name, to tutor you. Like, it was super fast. It was one tutoring session, and I went and I, like, passed all my tests. So all of a sudden, my senior year, junior to senior year, I found myself, like, tutoring a bunch of people, and I didn't mind it because I really enjoyed it. And I had people telling me, like, you should be a teacher. I was like, no way. Like, I'm not going to be a teacher. I really just wanted to, like, spend time with my friends. I wanted to make sure I did well in school because I really took pride in, like, how well I did, besides the fact I didn't want to get in trouble with my parents. But it was, like, right around that time that I started thinking about maybe something involving tutoring. But even at that time, being a teacher wasn't really something that I thought, like, was ever something I would do.
What college did you go to?
I went to California Baptist University in Riverside. I am originally from Banning, California, which is close to Cabazon, Palm Springs area. Yep, desert area. So I wanted to go to a college that was far enough where my family wasn't going to visit me all the time, but close enough where if I needed to, I could still go home. And so I was able to live on campus because of scholarships and things. And I did have to get some loans, but I really enjoyed it. I went and visited campus. It was a little bit smaller. Now it's pretty huge, but it was a little bit smaller. And they emphasized a lot of things. Like they had a lot of specialties. So I thought that was nice too because I still had no idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah, we want to apply to California Baptist.
It's one of my top choices.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And they had just opened like the Jaeger building, which is the new part of it.
Aren't they like building another?
Oh my gosh,
Like
they built so
yeah.
many other things.
Yeah.
All my student loans are paid for all the new things for you guys, but yeah, they have a lot of really cool
They were
things.
explaining us how everybody gets on like they go everywhere to Disneyland and stuff like that.
Yes, that was another. They have like a student services area,
Yeah.
and I used to go there all the time. Like it was a cool hangout spot, but it was also really cool because there's a lot of discounted things. So movie tickets were $10, but you could go there and buy them for $5. Or Disney, like when growing up, Disneyland was always so expensive. My family never went, but when we went, we could like get tickets for like $40, and I would go like whenever I got a chance. So it was a very cool experience.
Yeah. How did you block like all the negativity? Like, did you ever have negativity when you choose your career, like you chose it?
I did, and you know the sad part about it was the first bit of negativity I got was actually from my school counselor. My mom, like I stated, was a teacher. my dad owned a restaurant, but my dad did work really hard because he came over from Mexico when he was 12, and unfortunately at that time in the public school system, they didn't have as many programs and things in place for kids who were English language learners. So my dad had a really negative experience in school, with teachers not really trying to help him figure things out. He had to learn the language on his own. He said a lot of kids made fun of him. And so my dad actually ended up dropping out ninth grade year. And so my dad did work really hard, and he ended up opening a restaurant that's still in business. He opened it a year before I was born. And so 34, 5-ish years later, it's still really successful. It's very popular, and I'm super proud of all the work that he's done. But he would be the first one to tell me growing up, like, you know, you work hard now so that way you can do something you really enjoy. He enjoys it. He always loved cooking and putting things together, but he never wanted the same kind of, he wanted a different kind of struggle for me, not the struggle he had to go through, right? And my mom was the first one in her family of 5 to ever go to college. So they were always put into my head, like, you're going to college and you're going to do something with that, something you enjoy. So essentially, whatever work you have doesn't really feel like work. So junior and senior year, I was starting to see my counselor and talking about some of my possible schools that I wanted to go to. And I remember my counselor told me, I was asking about scholarships, and she was asking me, like, well, why do you need scholarships? And I'm like thinking, like, I'm not rich. And I like, what kind of scholarships can I start applying for?
Yeah.
And she was like, well, why do you want to go to college? And I'm thinking, like, oh, she's testing. And I was like, well, because, you know, I want to be successful in this or this. Not to say people can't be successful if they don't, because I had my dad here as an example. But I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I'd already taken AP classes. I was in Avid. I was doing all these steps to prepare for this. And she made a comment to me. She said, you don't really need to do that. She said, you know, you're a pretty girl. Your dad owns a restaurant. You can just get married, have kids, and you can work in his restaurant. And I was kind of shocked because, yes, I could have done that. My mom and dad met in a restaurant and got married later. She was a waitress. He was a cook. But I was kind of like, no, but I don't want to do that. She's like, no, you're good. Like, you can, like, you got this. You'll raise a family. Yeah. And I was kind of like, well,
she was kind of deciding for you.
Yeah, she really was deciding for me. And it made me think, like, wait, does she not think I can do it? Like, this whole time, I had people, I was lucky enough to have people in my life, specifically family, who told me, you can do it if you work hard, you can do it, you can do it. And some people in my family saying, no, you will do it. Like, it was not an option. And so never in my life had I really had anybody who made me think otherwise. And here she is, this person in authority, who's supposed to help me with this pathway. And she's saying, no, like, you don't need to do that. That's not for you. Like, you're going to get married. You'll have kids. You'll live in Banning. Because most of my family did live in Banning, even though one was a nurse, one was this, one was that. She's like, no, you'll just work in a restaurant. Like, your dad's restaurant. You're fine. You're good. And I was like, no, that's not what I want. And she's like, you're still young. Like, you don't know what you want. Trust me. This is a better avenue for you. And so I remember, like, I went home. I didn't tell anybody about it. My mom, no one. And I was kind of, like, a little devastated by it. And then the next morning, I remember I got up and I was like, no, I'm going to college. Like, I'm doing this. Now, if I had told my mom probably would have been down there, like, super quick. But this was, like, my first chance for me to kind of stand up for what I wanted. And so I went, there was 2 counselors, because our high school was big, but not super big. There was 2 different counselors, and it was by alphabet. My last name being Ramirez. I was with this counselor, and I went to the other counselor and said, I would like to talk to you. She said, I'm not your counselor, this is your counselor. And I said, well, this is what happened. She was kind of shocked by it, thought I misunderstood. Perhaps I did.
Yeah.
But she sat down with me, she talked to me about different things, and then from that point on, she actually ended up working closely with me. So I kind of have a feeling that maybe she went to go talk to the other counselor and maybe it did confirm what I was feeling, that she, like, how she was coming across. Because from that point on, whenever I went up there to talk to a counselor to get help with something, she was always the one that would say, oh, come on in. And I didn't really have any other interaction with the other one.
That's a good thing. Now they have, like, a specific Avid counselor.
That's
like,
awesome.
For, like, Avid students, since we're in Avid, that's what.
That's great.
Well, How do you know that this was the right career for you?
So I was already starting to get little clues, even though I was in denial. When,
Mhm.
like I stated, when I was in the latter part of high school. Then when I went to college, my first year, I had a couple different jobs, and the one that I found I enjoyed the most was actually after school tutoring. And then I got offered a cheap tutoring job at CBU, and then I realized it was at that point that I was like, okay, I get it. I like teaching. This is what I would much rather do than anything else, because I had worked at Kenneth Poole in Ontario Mills Mall. I'd worked at Old Spaghetti Factory as a waitress, which I totally hated. It was so interesting. Things with adults I didn't really like, but anything with kids and teaching them things, even if it was like babysitting, I always found myself like teaching them something, and I really enjoyed it. So at that point, at the end of my freshman year, I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And I kind of reluctantly did it, but I ended up going through school so fast because I was doubling up on so many classes and even doing summer school. And it all kind of clicked, and I just realized this is really what I want to be doing with my life.
What do you love most about your career, your everyday life?
Oh man, one of the coolest things I think about teaching, because I have a reason why I really love teaching, and have a reason why I really love teaching the grade that I do. Because a lot of people would say like sixth grade or even junior high, that's kind of scary. As far as teaching, I think it's super cool because teaching is the only profession that really is like the foundation of all professions. In this classroom, I could have a scientist that's going to cure cancer. And because of what we did in science, that was the one thing that sparked that interest, that maybe later on I could do something. In this classroom, I could have the next author of like the Harry Potter phenomenon, because we spent time doing creative writing, and we talked about using dialogue and tone. Like in this classroom, I have like the future of every single possible option of careers, and there's no other job where you can kind of have your hand in that many different pies, so to speak. And so not only do I have a hand in that and helping them figure out a little bit about what they're interested in or pique their interest in different things, but it's also, you're with them for so long that you really get to make these connections with them, which is one of the reasons why I like sixth grade in elementary.
Who's the oldest remember you?
Well, the thing is that I had teachers that I remember their name, but I don't remember.
Your face. How does it?
Well, I remember their face, but I don't remember how I necessarily felt when I was with them. I think there's a quote from Maya Angelou that says, "You might not always remember what people said, but you'll always remember how like they made you feel." And I think that's huge for me. A lot of the way that I do things in my classroom is a lot of relational. Like I want to make sure that even if they don't remember the math that I taught them in here, they remember how they felt when they were doing math, whether they got it right away or they didn't. Like they still felt like I cared about them. They still felt that they were important. They felt like they could do something, accomplish something. They felt supported. And being a teacher, you get ahead in all of those pieces. Sixth grade is one of my favorites because I kind of feel like for most kids, sixth grade is like the last place where they actually believe an adult might know more than their friends. And then after that, so you get all of your little bits of wisdom in there before it closes in seventh grade and maybe doesn't open back up till like they're 21 or 22. But they're starting to process things and understand different things about themselves, and you're able to be there to talk through things with them. You get your jokes and you can go back and forth and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's really neat.
To end off, what advice would you give to us?
For being a teacher,
Yeah.
or just in general?
Well, both in general.
For both. I would say advice. So when it comes to being a teacher, I think like when you know, being a teacher is not something you're like, oh, I guess I'll just be a teacher. I mean, some people do, and I feel like even the kids can tell when there's adults that are like, they
Yeah.
just decided, oh, I'm just going to be a teacher. Because the reality is, it's not like you just get holidays and summers off. You're always kind of planning and you're
Yeah.
always preparing things. But my advice would be, there's a lot of unexpected things when you become a teacher that you don't realize. A lot of times when you like play school, you think about it, you think about like, know, the lessons you do, and oh, everyone understands everything. Everyone got an A on the test. Like everything goes perfect, but you don't always realize um, like all the stuff that you do after, like behind the scenes when the kids leave. Like I hear after school, like not just for this, but helping a student because it took him a little bit more time to get something done, and maybe he didn't have as much support at home. So I'm here because I want to make sure he knows he can do this, and opting out is not an option because I know he can. So the grading, sometimes there's a lot of politics. There's a lot of stuff that we don't realize with administration, or this teacher not liking this teacher, or there's a lot of craziness that happens with that. Parents, and you don't always agree. So there's a lot of that. Sometimes, there's a student that does something and you tell them, no, this is not okay, these are our rules, and then you talk to the parent says, no, I told them they could do that. And you're like, okay, that's hard because I'm an authority and they're an authority, and the kid, of course, is conflicted. How are you going to tell them at home they can do this and then expect them not to do it here, and then they get in trouble? So there's all those little missing pieces, but I think at the end of the day, you just got to remember, like, it's not about me, it's not about them, it's not about everything around me, it's about the kid.
Yeah.
And I just always think, like, for the kids in my class, I want the kind of teacher for them that I wanted and I needed. There's always, and we can get caught up in all the other stuff, but at the end of the day, each of these kids has their own story. There's something that's going on with them. So even when they might act up, that doesn't just happen. There's always something that's behind that. And if you don't have a relationship with them, then it's easy to just be like, oh, that's a bad kid. That kid always gives me a hard time. That kid always does this. That kid always. But if you know the kid, so it makes a difference. So advice, having a relationship with your students, and then also in the chaos of all the craziness that you don't expect with being a teacher that sometimes make it sound like wah wah, like makes it a little bit harder. Just remember, it's all about the kid, and I think at the end of the day, it always makes it worth it.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, of course.
The